And while there remain many unanswered questions about who they were, where they came from, and where they went, they have left a record of an inquiry that no one else seems interested in making. Where and how do we learn to believe again in the future, with hope and faith in the meaning of our own existence?
The Past Testament.
The Book of Gypsies, Chapter 1. And thus there came to be many great nations which knew how to make temples, and monuments, and inscriptions in stone, and wars, and slaves, and all the other things that are necessary for civilization. One of these was the Gypsy tribe, which was chosen by the gods to be the greatest of all nations, because it sat by the Nile River, which was the source of all life and very important, because the rest of the earth was a total desert, made of sand and rocks and other not very lively stuff, which may explain why the Gypsies spent most of their time thinking about death and planning for death, and writing about death, including a Book of the Dead, and building great big tombs called pyramids, including the Great Pyramid called Khufu, which is very mysterious and old and probably haunted, especially because no one can remember how it was built. Chapter 2. And the Gypsies did a lot of mysterious things for a very, very long time, including building many monuments and temples, such as the Sphinx, which had a lion's body and a woman's head and a riddle, and the tomb of King Tut, which was full of gold and also haunted, and many, many stone inscriptions, called hieroglyphics, which celebrated the Gypsy gods who had names like Ra, Horus, Amon, and so forth, as well as kings and queens who had names like Ramses, Nefertiti, Ptolemy, and so on. And they were wrapped up like mummies and buried inside the pyramids with all their things and all their slaves. Chapter 3. And then there was a king called Akhenaten, who had a funny-shaped head and a pot-belly, which made him believe that there was really only one god who was called Aton, and who had created everything all by himself, etc. But Akhenaten died, and the apes called Gypsies went back to doing things the old way with lots of gods. But that didn't work out either, because the gods allowed the Gypsies to be invaded a lot by other tribes of chosen apes, who took practically everything away from the Gypsies, including Cleopatra, who was a beautiful queen rolled up in a rug, who also wore a lot of eye makeup and got killed by an asp, which pretty well wrapped up things for the Gypsies. Chapter 4. And so the Gypsies were scattered to the four corners of the earth and had to make do as best they could without anything, except a deck of cards, and a bunch of pretty mysterious ways that enabled them to foretell the future, which isn't usually all that mysterious anyway, as we shall see. The Book of Mesopotamians, Chapter 1. And there was another tribe of apes which called themselves Mesopotamians for some reason. They believed they had been especially chosen by their gods to make temples and monuments and inscriptions and wars and slaves, and were therefore civilized, which is why they lived between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, in the cradle of civilization. Chapter 2. The Mesopotamians had writing which was called cuneiform, because they never did anything the easy way. For example, they built temples with steps that were too tall to climb and called them ziggurats for some reason. And they didn't write on stone, but mud, which they had a lot of in the cradle of civilization. Chapter 3. But the Mesopotamians didn't stay chosen for very long because they never did things the easy way, which will hurt you in the long run, as almost everyone knows. unless you happen to live in the cradle of civilization.